Hello, this is Brook Thompson, and we are in week 3 where we are going to be discussing empathy and social responsibility. We will quickly introduce the two topics. We will discuss what they are, what the professionals are saying about each, and what the implications can be. Empathy. In my own words, empathy is one's ability to relate to and feel what someone else is feeling. Merriam-Webster defines empathy as the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. Baron more simply writes that empathy is to be aware of and understand how others feel. The first article that I found related to empathy was titled Ethics, Beyond Patient Care, Practicing Empathy in the Workplace. I was most interested because I do a lot of work in the healthcare space as an auditor. Author Dr. Christine Sorrell-Dinkins provided a good background on the origination of the term empathy. Throughout the article, she also explained how nurses use empathy, and it really comes naturally in their everyday lives. To practice empathy, she encouraged everyone to ask themselves the following questions. What if I found myself tomorrow to be in X's position? How would I feel about my daily activities? What would be hardest for me? What would bring me the most joy? And a quote that I found that I felt was very fitting is, those of us who consistently practice empathy at the workplace may find ourselves less stressed and more energized because of this realization that we are, in a fundamental way, connected with all of our coworkers. I find this very fitting. The second article that I found related to empathy was a little different. It was called Ethics and Personality, Empathy and Narcissism as Moderators of Ethical Decision-Making in Business Students. The paper was a two-part study, but I was most interested on one part of the study, which was research about whether measures of an empathetic or narcissistic personality predicted self-reported ethical decision-making in students. Undoubtedly, the findings demonstrated that empathetic and narcissistic personality traits are significant predictors of ethical decision-making. As an audit manager, I am responsible for managing several members on each audit engagement. Each individual person that I manage has their own non-work life that may affect their work productivity or attitude. I've encountered several new staff that don't have any clue what's going on, and unless I can empathize with them and remember what I was going through when I was at their stage in my career, I will be an ineffective manager. I also find that I've had to exhibit empathy towards the partners on my audits. I need to see things from their perspective in order to understand why they're asking the questions they are, why they feel a certain way about certain decisions, etc. During my research, I found that it was pretty common for managers to shrug off empathy as a soft leadership skill. But once managers recognize that effective management is all about accomplishing work through others, empathy becomes more important of a trait. Chief HR Officer at Better Works, who has studied the topic of empathy at length, argues that empathy is one of the most critical capabilities needed to lead and drive employee engagement in a diverse, dispersed, and constantly changing environment. It's absolutely imperative for leaders to exhibit empathy for the employees that they manage. Empathy is certainly an area that I struggle with personally. I typically forge ahead without regard to those that may get left behind or are slower to pick up certain tasks. As a result of this week's research, I have learned that I need to work on becoming more empathetic. It's clearly proven to be a necessary element of emotional intelligence. A quote, empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself. I couldn't find this more true. Moving on now to social responsibility. In my own words, I think social responsibility is the idea of doing what you can to leave the smallest footprint. Cambridge Dictionary defines social responsibility as the practice of producing goods and services in a way that is not harmful to society or the environment. On the other hand, Baron writes that social responsibility is to identify with one's social group and cooperate with others. Throughout my research, I learned that corporate social responsibility, or CSR, is slightly different than social responsibility, the social responsibility we're talking about when we're talking about emotional intelligence. Social responsibility also is commonly understood as social intelligence. After reading several articles regarding social responsibility, I now understand that corporate social responsibility and social responsibility in the emotional intelligence sense are very common. Both look at their surroundings, they connect with either the environment or the people. Davies et al. Explains that social intelligence is the capacity to make connections with other people and to manage complex emotions and reactions. A peer-reviewed journal in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry titled The Way We Do Things the Way We Do, Decision-Making Transparency identified key ways that children pick up social cues, thus strengthening their social responsibilities. These cues included observing before approaching and intent listening, etc. While researching social responsibility, I couldn't help but think about a term that my firm uses called flocking. People with similar interests tend to spend more time together than those with few commonalities. Usually you'll find a distinct and natural drift between male and females during social settings. My firm is trying to break this separation by identifying the divisions and encouraging employees to break formation and get to know others not in our typical social circles. Knowing my audience, I wouldn't approach a group of men and ask them what their thoughts were on the latest episode of The Bachelor. Rather, I might try connecting to them by maybe commenting on the recent Broncos game or asking how their families are. There are absolutely managerial implications of social responsibility. If managers can't relate to their employees, interpersonal relationships will struggle and manager effectiveness will decline. I think that Mark Washek explains it best when he says, "It's easy to recognize that all managers with the ability to lead and inspire others have to first be effective communicators. However, it's not always easy to understand what it takes to be an effective communicator and just what you must do to be good at it. To be an effective communicator, you need to understand a person's style and how they want to be communicated with." I think this is a very good example of social responsibility. Upon reviewing and researching social responsibility, I now know that I can definitely do more to understand the social networks of those that I work with regularly. I can take what was learned from the research study with children that observing and being an intent listener may help increase my social responsibility. Although I do feel that I'm a team player and I can improve my social responsibility by collaborating with my team members on how to make processes and procedures more better or efficient. This week's research indicated that empathy and social responsibility are important pieces to the emotional intelligence paradigm. Both are important, and when practiced, can help leaders and managers better relate to their employees. A quote I really liked by Meryl Streep was, "The great gift of human beings is that we have the power of empathy." I hope you all had a great week. Can't wait to see you in the forums in week 4.